Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every week. Today we have
Rebecca George.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's cold out there today.
It is. It's alarming.
We had to turn on our heat for the first time yesterday.
Yeah, same.
I waited out as long as I could, pretty much.
Yeah.
And now it's on, but it comes on so loudly. So if it ever comes on, we might have to stop.
Okay.
It sounds like you're in a wind tunnel. There's a grate right there, and it's so loud. But so you own a store around here, down the block.
Yeah, just a couple blocks away from here.
Yeah,
in Wicker Park.
Yeah. So give us a little backstory on Volumes, first of all, and how did you choose to be in Wicker Park?
I lived most of my adult life in Wicker Park.
Okay.
I think my first apartment in Wicker Park was like in 2003.
Oh.
So I've been around the neighborhood for a while.
Have you seen it like change and stuff?
I've seen it. Yeah, absolutely changed. So the address of our place right now, 1474.
Yeah.
Back in my 20s, I would never have gone past Nick's, which is about like a half a block north of me.
Okay.
After a certain time at night.
Sure.
There used to be a huge swath of Milwaukee with all the furniture stores and regardless, everything was closed and you just wouldn't walk past that.
Yeah.
You know? Everything was still metal grated. Everything was.
Sure.
Yeah, it was very different. I mean, Filter used to be in the Flatiron building and people were smoking in there. You know, I mean, talk about a very big difference. There weren't as many bars as there are now. Now it's like every 5 feet.
Like every other building, or maybe the same building.
Yeah,
there's two of them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's still a lot of like the resale clothing shops. That's kind of like what makes Wicker Park. Yeah. I mean, that's something in high school that we would come down for. I had this like really cheap garden apartment. And I was a high school teacher at the time. Okay. So, and a friend of mine lived on the same block. There were like needles in the alley.
Oh,
like, gosh. It was a very different. It didn't feel like unsafe per se. Sure. I don't know. But it was a very different world.
Yeah. Why did you choose to move here specifically? It's because it was close to the school that you were working at, or?
No, I worked at a school that was way down on the south side. No, I think there was a trend right then. My first apartment was in Lakeview. Okay. And there was kind of a trend of people starting to move over here. Sure. It was cheaper. Yeah. And, still good access to downtown, everything.
Right. So. Yeah. And we should talk about your bookstore.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
That's why you're here. So Volumes is your bookstore. It's also a cafe as well. Mm-hmm. And that's right on Milwaukee over there. Yep. I've actually I moved here 2 months ago, and it was one of the first places I stopped actually. Oh, really? Yeah. Nice. Because I was walking around, we were looking at this place, and I was like walking down and seeing it's a very inviting space, you know. And when you're in there, it feels like you feel comfortable. Thanks. Which you can't say about a lot of places.
Yeah. We do get that compliment a lot. Yeah. That just like it's like a good vibe. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And I think it's a combination of like the cafe and the books and stuff like that.
And it feels warm and it smells good. Yeah. Although I can't smell it anymore. People come in all the time and they're like, "Oh, it smells great." I'm like, "What do you smell?"
I think it's the smell of books. Yeah. New books or something. Or
and coffee. I think the coffee too. But I'm like, describe it to me. I don't know what that is. You know?
Yeah, you can make a candle or something out of that, make a lot of money. Yeah. But yeah, so it was one of those places. And when did you open up shop?
We opened up in March of 2016.
Okay.
We started working on that space in March of 2015. So it took us a year to put everything together and deal with the city of Chicago. And then I probably started looking for a space sometime in mid or maybe even early 2014. And we looked at some other places in Wicker Park. We actually even got into negotiations with a different space. Okay. But, I saw the potential in that space. It was not great when really? We got in there. Yeah.
It's really nice now.
Yeah. So there was a resale clothing shop that had been there forever called Recycle. Okay. And they've been there for like 15 years. And then prior to that, there was like a carpet store. It's just nobody had really made a lot of updates to it. Sure. I mean, there was carpet, and when we took that carpet off, oh my God, it was maybe the most disgusting thing. The walls, I mean, the building's from 1883. the walls are like that original plaster, and it's just had like 9,000 coats of paint on it.
Right.
We spent weeks, like my dad and my sister and I, just plastering and sanding.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff.
All the things you think about when you open a business. I know.
Yeah. It's like literally like a month of my life was just like plastering and sanding. And then, I mean, we added bathrooms. We added, obviously, the bar area in the front. We did a lot of the stuff ourselves to save money, but also just because we can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Was it more difficult because it wasn't just a bookstore, it was a cafe as well? Was there different like permits and stuff you had to get and all that to serve, or no? Did it make it more of a headache?
No, it does make it more of a headache. If it was just a bookstore, then it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Anytime there's food service, that's like a bigger deal. Right. And like we're changing plumbing, we're changing HVAC, there are a bunch of things that we have to do with that. So that adds up. Yeah.
And you didn't start out, I guess, out of college and be like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You took like a very different path.
Yeah.
Even in college, you went to the University of Iowa, right?
I went to Iowa. Mm-hmm.
And what were you planning on doing when you graduated?
It's funny. I had this very like Goodwill Hunting moment with a professor of mine, Frederick Woodard, and where he was like, you need to be a writer. Like that's where he saw me going. Sure. And the very practical side of me said, like, that's not practical. And like, my parents aren't going to think that's practical.
Yeah.
So I immediately went to get my master's in education.
Okay.
Instead.
Yeah.
And like, didn't feel great about it, but I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So, literally right after graduation, I moved to the city, maybe like 2 weeks after I graduated college. I moved to the city. I went to National Louis, got my master's in education. And then there was a CPS hiring freeze right after that.
Yeah.
And I went to Europe for a bit to teach English to like really ornery Czech business people.
Yeah.
And then I came back and started working in the South Side of Chicago.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what drew you, because it was just more practical and you could like use your skills sort of in that way. Is that why you
mean, obviously my passion's in books,
right.
And literature. And, and even going through that education, I realized that I really am passionate about education. I still am.
Yeah.
I realized there was something I was good at. And, I really enjoy teaching.
Yeah.
Teaching in the city is a really stressful thing. I mean, especially the school that I was at was that particular period of time was really stressful.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sold that was going to be my life. So I decided to apply for grad school. Okay. And again, and I had all these different places to get my MFA, and I ended up picking Naropa, which is a Buddhist university in Boulder.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And it's the school that was founded by Allen Ginsberg.
Oh, really?
And so it's like the opposite of everything I had done up until that point.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is going to be great. It's an adventure. I'll be in the mountains and get away from like the stress of the city for a bit.
Yeah. So what was the point then? Did you end up going to that school?
Yeah, I went to Naropa
for
2 years.
So what was a point where you were like kind of switching like, oh, maybe education's not for me. I want to like, when did you start playing with the idea of opening a business in general?
Well, actually, the route kind of went into publishing. And while I was in grad school, I interned for a literary agent. And then I thought maybe I'd kind of go same. I went like, I need to go practical.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm getting this MFA,
well,
but like, how can I apply? Like, how can I apply this? So I started reaching out and trying to figure out how I could apply this. Yeah. One was like, I was working with the small press. Two, I was working with this agent. She recommended that I go to the University of Denver Publishing Institute.
Okay.
So I did that. It's a 4-week chaotic boot camp. And it used to be run by Joyce Maskis, who owned Tattered Cover bookstores out in Denver. And you learn every single aspect of the publishing industry, and they bring in people from all those different parts of the industry to talk with you.
It's like a super serious.
Yeah, it's super serious. You get like a certificate at the end of it. Yeah. And they're kind of like a feeder program for the publishing world, And I was like, cool, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to like, kick some ass with some publishing. This is going to be great, y'all. Yeah. And actually I went to New York At this point, I'm like 29.
Okay.
And the publishers go, I got offered like 2 different jobs, but it was like, entry level.
Yeah.
And they're like, cool, we're going to give you $27,000 for this position. And I was just that week, like doing the math on what it would need to just even like barely live there.
It's not that much. It's way more.
And I'm like, I'm not 21. I don't want to live with 9 people in a loft in Brooklyn.
Bunk beds and stuff.
Yeah, like that's not where I'm at in life. And so I came back to Chicago. I got a job with a small press called Lake Claremont and started working with them. And then I got some adjunct positions, on the side. I was kind of doing both in tandem. And then I was going to go get my PhD. I was literally like giving up my apartment and my job. I was about to move to Detroit.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And buy a house for like $30,000 because it's so cheap.
You can. Yeah, you can buy 6 if you want.
Yeah. And I kept seeing my colleagues who were more educated than me. They already had their PhD, were well liked, had been adjuncts forever.
Yeah.
And they were not even getting interviews for full-time positions at the universities or the colleges that they were teaching at.
Wow.
And I thought, like, what's the point?
Right.
And if those PhDs were maybe making like a few $100 per class more than me.
Yeah.
So that's like 5 years of education to like maybe be able to afford health insurance.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it.
Yeah. Like that seemed not right. And I was like, what, let's rethink this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that process then, how did you land? Was it
on
just
Bookstore?
Yeah. Because you were just passionate about books always?
Always. And I think I've always like, thank God for social media too, been kind of like following all these different, and I came across an article about Greenlight Bookstore. I think it was in New York Magazine, and it was like how to open a bookstore, and they broke down all of their costs. And I was like, wow, that's like, it's a lot of money, but it's like less than I thought, to make that happen. And I started kind of doing exploratory. The academic in me was like, I'm going to get all the data.
Yeah.
And I went to some conferences. I started literally cold calling bookstores. And with like similar concepts. I called Joyce from Tattered Cover and had a long conversation with her about it. Then I kind of brought it to my family and was like, there's this thing I want to do.
What did they say about it?
Well, maybe we'll think about it. And I was like, no, literally, like, here's all the data. Like, I've been working on this for months.
Look at my PowerPoint.
Here's the data.
Right here.
Yeah. And I was like, look at it.
Yeah.
And then come back and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
And then they came back and you're like, this is a really good idea. I think,
Yeah. I mean, because it was not just like something that you threw out there. Like you obviously cared enough to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it matters. And so I guess why was it important specifically for you? Because I know at your bookstore, or not maybe you specifically, but you guys look through all the books before you put them on the shelves.
Yeah.
Like everything's hand selected. But I first want to like, and sounds like a dumb question, but like what is an independent bookstore and how is that different from another?
From those other ones? Well, from corporate bookstores?
Right.
Or, okay. So each
like,
one's...
what do they do differently? I know the difference business wise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we always say, an independent bookstore is like a direct reflection of the community that it's in.
Sure.
Wicker Park's no different. It took a few months. We immediately saw trends of like what people wanted or didn't want.
Sure.
And, part of that is like us as like tastemakers of like what we think is really good and really cool and, interesting, and making sure we select that in so that people take a chance on, small presses and, debut authors, things like that. Yeah.
Because are you guys putting books in your store that like a Barnes and Noble or something would have, or is it like really they don't like house like smaller authors? Because I haven't been to a Barnes and Noble in forever.
I believe that there was like a policy that they have like stopped doing as many with debut authors, but they definitely don't have all of those small presses
because they're afraid to take like a hit on volume and not selling or something.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we have some of the big players, books. There's some that I don't touch unless somebody asks for it.
Right.
And then if like 2 or 3 people ask for it, then I'm like, okay, I'll bring a couple in.
Yeah.
But there's some that I don't bring in. I mean, there are thousands of books that come out like on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday books come out, right? That's how the year works. A lot of people don't know that, but every Tuesday is a pub day, just like in music, we're every Friday, right? So we have info 6, 8, 12 months in advance. We go through that info. We go through it with our publisher reps. We go through it ourselves. We read a lot of different kinds of articles and things and interviews. And then we have access to advanced reader copies between 6 and 8 months in advance of a book. And we kind of share, like each one of us picks it up. The problem I have actually, and I yell at my staff about this, is that we'll all like attack the same book. And I'm like, that's not helping anyone. You know,
we're just gonna have one book in the store and it's gonna be awesome.
But you know, it's kind of a treat. Like, do I need to read the new Colson Whitehead? No, I don't. Colson Whitehead's, but like, do I want to read the new Colson Whitehead? Absolutely. So we kind of toe that line.
Because how does that become something? Like, how do you become a tastemaker is my question, because like you obviously have your own personal opinions on like what you like and things like that. Like, how can you objectively be like, you know what, this is a really good book, even if you don't like it? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. So I would say that a lot of what we do is like, number one, I know what the clientele wants, you know, for the most part. I'm like, still, it's a risky business. I'm literally betting. Every week I'm betting with my own money of whether or not somebody is gonna you know, gonna like this that book or not. I think, you know, we look at a book and say, is this interesting? Is this like, you know, gonna add value to somebody's life? Is this like maybe something different that they've never thought of before? And when it comes to fiction, like for instance, I really love pretty much anything that $2 Radio, the publisher does, small publisher. They just have really good taste. So I almost don't even need to look at half their books because I just know it's going to be awesome. And you know, and those are a lot of debut authors. Haymarket, I don't really even have to look at what Haymarket's doing. I mean, I just love everything they're doing. So, you know, let's do it. You know?
Is there any like inkling for, have you written a book?
Have I written a book? Oh, well, I had to get my MFA, but you know, it's like hilariously sitting on a shelf right now.
It's $3,000 to buy it. It's a single copy.
One copy. It's bound.
Has there ever been an inkling that you would want to start writing too?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my staff says he can tell when I've done something creative and like that, or I've been writing, because I just seem like a bit more zen for a bit. Absolutely. Do I have time? No, I don't have any time to do anything. I mean, the first thing I do when I wake up is like immediately like, what needs to be done today? And then
you're right,
I'm doing that until like 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Cause when I reached out to you, it was probably like 3 or 4 months ago. And you're like, I have a calendar in a year in advance or something. So I know I already know what's happening.
Yeah, I know what's happening.
So we should talk about what you're doing today too. You're going down to the new store that you opened.
Yeah. We just opened a second store
on Michigan Avenue, right? So how did you decide that now was a good time to expand to another space?
Last year, we kind of had this weird opportunity to do this holiday pop-up in Water Tower Place.
Okay.
And I know that particular space really well. My dad has had a practice in that building since like 1979.
Really?
So I kind of like grew up knowing that mall and the current one that we're in. I know those spaces. And I said, okay, like this is an opportunity to like meet new customers, you know, learn a bit about like a different environment. And so we did that and it was great. I mean, it paid for itself, you know, we learned a lot. And whether can I manage two different
spaces
spots, at the same time when one is already like insane. So we've done that, and immediately after 900 North approached us and I was like, my dude, we just finished with that other thing, you know, like give me a breather. But I thought what they're doing over there in 900, I find really fascinating.
What are they doing? So
they've done this huge renovation of that space. And they've added like, so you know, in most malls, they started removing seating or like areas for people to sit because they didn't want people loitering.
Right.
They've done the opposite. They've created on every floor, there's like 2 tables or a table and like 2 chairs. And people are working all day. Or there's like little conversation spaces with like really cute plush chairs.
Yeah.
And people in the community come and they get a coffee and then they like meet there. Yeah. And then they have the Astor Hall, which is a food hall brought by the guys from Au Cheval.
Okay.
And it's just really good food. It's beautiful space. There's kind of like a second story that has like a bar lounge that looks over the lake.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. And they really want to bring in events. They know that their clientele is predominantly more local than other spaces.
Yeah.
And I think they see the value add of a bookstore. And this has actually happened nationwide where malls are asking bookstores to come in. Okay. Because I think they're realizing like, hey, they're anchors. They, you know, they're a destination store. So
yeah, because I was reading, it was something, I think it was either something you said or something that I just saw that there was like a massive increase in independent bookstores.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since in the last 10 years or something. Why do you think that they're becoming more and more why were they not popular in the first place, I guess? Or not popular, but not growing.
All right. So part of it was, you know, the recession hit hard. Sure. You know what? But people say that. And I think a lot of it actually had to do with retirement too. I think a lot of people just who own bookstores happen to be like finishing out right around the same time period.
Yeah, like we're done.
You know? Yeah. And, you know, certainly Barnes and Noble and Borders hit a lot of bookstores in the way that Walmart does in a way, you know, and they took away clientele from. But I also think that a lot of independent bookstores weren't adapting with the time and whether or not they were like actually putting their inventory on a computer or, you know, ordering in a more speedy fashion, having a web presence. And then what we do a lot, and you'll find a lot of independent bookstores now, is events.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw you guys do a ton.
Like curating events for the community. Right. And the ones that didn't do that, those are the ones that, you know, kind of fell by the wayside. Right. And I think the reason that they're coming back is people saw like a little shred of light through the clouds, you know, like, oh, this is something we can do. And now it's on social media too, you know, the way that how pervasive that is, that people are seeing like, oh, this friend or friend I know just opened one in something, or they stumble across it on their travels and think like, I could do that.
Yeah. And I think for me too, personally, there's something attractive about like going to an independent bookstore, buying a book and not being on your phone or not being in front of a screen and like having a break. Yeah. I feel like, you know, when technology and stuff first started ramping up and the internet was huge, like when I was in middle school, that's when like the dial up was ending, you know, a little bit, and like internet was getting faster and people were on computers more and stuff. And it almost felt like it got oversaturated. It's like, this is too much. Like this is too much technology. I need like to chill and like not be in front of a screen because I am all day. And it also just makes you feel like you're smart, you know, like you're doing something good. Yeah. Like this is
you are doing something good. I think you're doing something good for, you know, yourself. And I think it's a different form of self-care. Yeah. I think that's like a big trend, whatever, less, but I think books are a big form of self-care. Yeah. And people who recognize that, like, not only is it, putting you, like taking you away from that chaos, like the screens and the whatever, but it's also like forcing you to take perspective on somebody else, you know, from somebody else's eyes, right? You know, like you're really learning about the world and people and relationships in a way that you're never going to get by spending hours on Twitter. Right. You know? Yeah. My fiance now, she's a huge reader. She'll read like a book in like a day. Yeah. I can't do that. I'm way too slow to read like that. And I think from a young age, I got really frustrated with that because I was never like the fastest reader and everyone else was done and I was still like sweating, like trying to read quicker, you know? So from a very young age, were you just really into all books? All things books. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was the weird kid who like could read before I hit kindergarten. Wow. And not because I had a tutor, but just because you just read so interested. I picked it up. Well, I think there are two different ways people read. Some people read by like learning the alphabet and then structuring them together. And some people read by like like visual memorization.
Yeah.
My parents, they read us stories every night. We're a big story family.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of the night, you know? Yeah. My mom, as a treat cause I was the youngest, which meant I got just like dragged around everywhere. Mm-hmm. One of the treats was like, okay, if you go on these errands with me, we can stop at the library and and then the rest of the conversation would be me bartering for how many. It'd be it was cool. If I'm like really good though, you know.
Yeah. How good do I got to be? What's the scale here?
And same thing, like if she had to drag me to like Woodfield Mall or something.
Yeah.
You know, and you're a little kid and you're like, oh, why? She'd be like, cool, we'll stop at, you know, B. Dalton or Walden Books or whatever. And then same thing. I'd be like, okay, if I'm like extra quiet, you know?
Yeah. What do you think it was about the book specifically that drew you so much to them?
Oh God, I just always loved story. I don't know. I love stories. I love books. I feel like, you know, I was the kid one of those kids who put a towel under the door at night. So my parents didn't know I was up reading. Like, okay. I just couldn't get enough. Yeah.
What was the first book that you remember like really impacting you in any sort of way?
I was like, I remember the books that I really loved when I was like little, but for weird reasons, you know.
Like what was one of those?
Like I really loved One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish.
It's a classic.
Also just I loved the way that my dad read it,
okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And as I got a little bit older, I really loved, and this is a weird one, but I really loved Dear Mr. Henshaw.
I don't think I know that.
It's this great story it's the story of this boy who writes letters to an author. Okay. And it's an author of a book about like all these things you can do with a moose. And clearly the kid is just like aching for some kind of a connection with an adult.
Right. And
that writer, you know, writes him back and you kind of get to know more about the kid and that, you know, his dad is gone a lot and, you know, and like he's very confused about, you know, certain things with his life. And he's just made this beautiful connection with this author. Yeah. And I don't know why. I mean, that was good for me, I think, to like step in that young boy's shoes. And but yeah, I remember that story so well. And I haven't picked that up in, you know, 30 years. So.
Yeah. It's amazing how your mind works. Yeah. Like that in with music too. Like you can remember songs that you listen to and all the words. Yeah. So growing up then and like really being into books, was there, looking back now, a specific like bookstore or anything that you went to that like planted the seed of like, this would be really
a really cool thing to do?
Like maybe you didn't think about it then, but like looking back, if there was a really
there actually was, hilariously, where like we did our pop-up last year, there used to be this like Rizzoli's, which was, looking back on it now, I mean, it was like very heavy wood and very, you know, it felt very like posh, but I thought it seemed like, wow, this is like a really special place for books.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, this is like
because it was so fancy.
Yeah. You know, where I grew up in the suburbs, there wasn't an independent bookstore near me.
Right.
But I'm trying to think of like certain ones that
like in college. I know you.
In college. So Prairie Lights. Yeah. Prairie Lights. Prairie Lights actually I think like gave me better grades because not because I studied in it. Prairie Lights bookstore in Iowa City. Okay. It's it's been around forever and it's like, you know, they do a lot of events and that's a really well curated store. But I used to give myself a deal like, okay, if you get like a B on this test or whatever, then see, I bribed myself, then like you're allowed to go and get a book and then I probably get 4. But like that was the deal with myself.
What was the vibe of that store like? Like was it similar to your store now or was it very different?
Oh, it's very different. So I mean it's quieter.
Okay.
There's a lot of academics there clearly because it's a university town. So there's definitely a little more air of like, I don't know, it's still just a great bookstore.
Yeah. Why was it so great? Like what, or to you, why was it?
I think like they curate that very well of, you know, there's really great fiction that you can just discover there. Yeah. Poetry. And part of that is because of the writing school there. So they're going to have like, you know, that's partially curated for that too, but they just have really good taste. And I think it's one of those places you didn't mind spending a lot of time in. Yeah. Same like in grad school, I lived in Boulder and Boulder bookstore is awesome. But there are also kind of a couple other small bookstores in town. And but Boulder bookstore is great.
Boulder seems like a place that would have really good bookstores. I don't know what it is about it, but it just seems like it would.
Yeah. And they have like Boulder bookstore has this cafe that's attached. And I spent a lot of time there for like working on stuff.
Yeah. So with this new store, are the hours is a permanent location right now for you guys? So are the hours going to be similar to the bookstore?
No, because we're beholden to the building. So
sure.
Which is fine. I mean, that's like nobody could open a bookstore at ground level in the city of Chicago, like downtown.
Yeah.
It's just like not a reality. There's no way that we could afford that rent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You have to be making like $1 million a month to make that happen. So yeah, we're like the mall hours are like 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
I bet that'll change a little bit in the holiday season. And then on Sundays it's 12 to 6.
Okay.
You know, it's way more manageable. It's like actually like a way less stressful bookstore. I don't have to get milk and syrup and toilet paper and, worry about people breaking in or like, I don't know.
More low
like,
maintenance.
Yeah. It's like 2 booksellers and books.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
So what are your hours over here in the Wicker Park location?
Well, actually, we just changed it like a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
We used to be 9:30 a.m. to 10. And after a little over 3.5 years, I was like, you know what? We're bringing it down to 9.
Okay.
And if we go over that with an event like last night, people were there after 9 o'clock, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But, I think it's healthier for my staff. It's healthier for us.
Yeah.
And most of the people on days that we don't have events, if they're there between 9 and 10, they're not buying anything.
Oh, no.
You know? So
they're just waiting it out before.
Yeah. So it's like, you're doing the math for a while and I'm like, is this worth it to me to be paying my staff this
an extra hour? Yeah.
No.
How did you hire those people? Like, how did you find people that were, because do they look over books too and like approve or say, hey, this would be a good recommendation? Yeah.
We're all on the same team in that regard.
Yeah.
So, we've had some luck with staff. Our first staff was great. We took a lot of risk on people who had never done bookselling before, but they were all turned out great. Right now, I mean, we honestly get like 10, 15 resumes a week.
Oh, wow.
Whether it's walk-ins or emails or something. Everyone thinks they want to work in a bookstore. But I think they have this idealized kind of thought that it's, I can just sit and read all day.
Yeah.
Listen, no one gets to sit and read during the work.
You're working at a business.
In fact, if I catch you just sitting there and reading, I'm angry.
Yeah.
Do you know how much other stuff there needs to be done?
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So it's not that. It's like, and you're going to have to clean a bathroom and you're going to have to take the trash out and you're going to have to mop stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's like their idea. They're on like a plush couch, just reading a book.
You're like,
waiting
that's
for someone
not
to
it.
talk
Or
to
like
you.
that you'll be quietly, shelving books. When like yesterday I worked 12 hours. I only sat for like maybe 20 minutes of that.
Yeah.
And it was busy. It was, made 1 million lattes and
that's a good sign though. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the hours. What is your like website and social media stuff for the bookstore?
For Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Yeah. Everything is at Volumes Books.
Okay.
I go back and forth. I mean, like I do most of it.
Okay.
And I do most of everything.
That's why you work 12 hours.
I mean, my sister does a lot of really important stuff, which is like back of the house stuff. She's doing scheduling. She's doing payroll.
Yeah.
She's doing that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then my end is like all the event scheduling, all like everything else.
Sure. Yeah.
Cafe, all that stuff.
So what's your website? Is it volumebooks.com?
Volumesbooks.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And as you said, you got new books all the time. So
every Tuesday there are new books to look at. Yeah.
Is there certain books that you've had since the beginning though? Like has there been, or do they all kind of get, recycled?
That turnover?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. That's a great question. I wonder, like with
3 years
inventory,
ago when you opened, is there a book?
There's probably like some used books that we had a bunch of people donate some used books right when we opened. I'm sure there's some like really crappy one. I'm sure there are a few that were from that initial order.
Yeah.
But that's a tough thing too. There's a difference between what we call front list and back list. So front list is like what's selling now, what's new.
Sure.
And then, backlist is like your classics or just the backlist of certain authors that you should always have. We don't always have that. And sometimes people get really angry, and I'm like, yeah, but I'll probably have it like next week. Like, like it's not like there's an auto refill function to a bookstore. Like I need to constantly thinking about every single title on that store and whether we have it.
Yeah. That's interesting though. Cause can you kind of tell what's happening in the community based on what books you get?
Like, oh my God. Yeah.
Can you see like trends happening or like,
well, after what the book world will call like the post-Trump bump.
Okay.
So like after the election in 2016, there was like a good year where everyone wanted nonfiction, like, you know, F like the social, world, like kind of, you know, what the heck, like everyone was trying to make sense of things.
Sure.
And their fiction choices were definitely looking for more escapism. And then now, you know, and lots of like feminist rhetoric, which is great. I feel like that's scaled back a little bit. And now people are looking again for things that are like challenging their mind, and, you know,
it is interesting that you can kind of see that with sales and like what books people are wanting.
Yeah. Plus, Wicker Park is really, like, I talked to other books out, like I was at a conference last week.
Yeah.
Wicker Park is weird. Wicker Park does not like mystery very much. We used to have a whole mystery section and like no one would buy it.
Which is dust all in the corner.
But that's like for most bookstores.
Those are like their best.
Yeah. They're like, all these ones are bestsellers, and I'll bring that book in and no one will touch it. It could be like the top of the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
And which I usually don't pay attention to, but like every now and then I'm going to bring in one copy, see what happens.
Yeah.
No one will touch it. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that is, you know?
Weird. Yeah.
They're very specific tastes.
Yeah. And like history books. The only time, you know, like those big, like Ron Chernow or like those big biopic kind of things.
Yeah.
The only time that really goes is around Father's Day.
Okay.
And Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Probably
so
also for their dads. Yeah.
Yeah.
But less for themselves.
Wow. That's interesting.
So I don't invest it as much in those sections versus like, you know, in other things that I think are important or that people want to read.
So do you get regulars, like people that you see and know now at this point?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Has there been any specific ones or stories that like really stick out to you about people that have come in and said something to you, or like how much this has meant to them?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yesterday, the cutest. So we got these tickets. There was a Peppa Pig live.
Okay.
If you don't know Peppa Pig, Peppa Pig's like kind of annoying little pig that's cute, and kids under
Love
4
it for some reason,
like just go nuts. And they had this live show at the Chicago Theater.
Okay.
And we gave we knew particular this one family that little girl's obsessed, and we gave her, and she comes barging in around like 6 o'clock last night, and she was like, "We saw Peppa Pig!" Like she was all excited. I know. She's like, "And we went on a train." Oh, cool. And then she like came up, she was like, "Thank you." It was really cute.
That is awesome.
Things like that, you know, the kids are ending up being like the coolest part of your job. And like there's one, I guess, who said that she wants to be a bookseller like when she grows up, and she's like 4, you know. I mean that the families that come in that even move away and they come back to visit. The families are where we feel like we're super invested. And then there are a lot of readers, like the moment they came in, I remember what book they just got. Like, how'd you like that last book? Then we have people who just come in for coffee, and I don't think I've ever seen buy a book, but we know them too. They're there every day. They're doing like, we're their workspace, you know? So you get to know them pretty well as well.
Yeah. It's just a really cool thing to be like a fixture of the community where people are actually coming in all the time, and it's going well.
Yeah. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming in and taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
It's been great.